Hi, Mike King, realnewsandhistory.com. It's May 11th, 2026, and the title of today's episode is The Fake Casualties of WAG the Ukraine. Yes, indeed, what's going on there now is fake, and I'm going to explain here. And here's just one image of hundreds of them. They're just fake. I mean, here's a soldier, not even injured. Who knows where this is filmed, and he's being carried away by two of his comrades, a wounded soldier. Just hundreds, thousands of images and videos over the course of these past few years, which are clearly fake, just like Gaza, just like Iran. But there's a reason for it, and we're going to explore that today. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button and that you're following me on Rumble so you'll get a notification every time I put out a new video. All right, so let's get started. This is based on a New York Times story headlined, Russia has lost more than 350,000 soldiers, a new estimate finds. A subheadline, the number raises the prospect that about 500,000 soldiers in total have died on the Russian and Ukrainian sides. That's approaching the total number of deaths of the U.S. Civil War, which is 600,000. And that's absurd. But that's what they say now. And what follows here is my analysis. Before WAG the Hormuz and WAG the Gaza, there was and still is a WAG the Ukraine operation pitting Russia against the Kyiv-ified NWO vassal state based in Kiev. That's the Ukraine. By the way, 90% of you guys know this, but for the benefit of those hearing it for the first time, when I say WAG this, WAG that, referencing a 1997 movie called WAG the Dog, which was about the CIA was staging a fake war and just putting out fake scenes and reports through their studio. You can look up the trailer for that. Put a trailer for that. It's a pretty good movie. So that's what's going on with all these fake wars that are being engineered as part of Q Operation WAG Iran, WAG Gaza, WAG the Ukraine. Though there may have been some initial real fighting and bloodshed during the opening weeks of the 2022 skirmish in the Donbass region, that's eastern Ukraine, now it's part of Russia, which has since been liberated and reclaimed by Russia, just about everything since fits the WAG the dog dynamic. AI, old footage, crisis actors, fake blood, etc. The so-called war gave Putin the domestic opening needed to flush out the fifth column traitors within Russia and secure it once and for all from the clutches of the New World Order. And so that's what happened. Anyone who came out against this war, they took the bait. Putin specifically called them out as scum and traitors, and so many of them fled Russia. Some of these very wealthy people who were liberal, libtarded, in league with the NWO. It was the last remnant of the NWO presence in Russia, and they fled. They went to Dubai, they went to Israel, surprise, surprise, London, all the places they fled. So he's purged the country, and that's part of the objective of this war. It enabled him to do that, to grab those kind of powers and then turn the innate patriotism of the people against these, quote, scum and traitors. As it is in the United States, so too it is in Russia. Patriots, in spite of the frustratingly delayed climax of the movie, are in complete control. Nobody should be blackpilling or sunshine patriot stuff, okay? Patriots are in total control. It's a tiresome movie. We want it to end. There's nothing to get discouraged and whine about here. As for the topic of this particular disinformation piece, and this is the Q York Times putting this out. Okay, so this isn't deep state disinfo. This serves their purposes of perpetuating this illusion of this horrible, never-ending war in Europe, which is not happening. But as for the topic of this particular disinformation piece, the casualty numbers, this is about as outrageously comical as that 70,000 to 90,000 dead Gazans figure being bandied about. Oh, the figures and the videos and the images coming out of so-called Gaza are just absurd. But you won't hear me complaining about it because everybody's blaming Israel. They hate Israel now. So it's a deception. It's a strategic deception and psyop for a good cause. We're fighting a war here. So consider all of this as what Plato used to refer to as the noble lie. So I'm not complaining about these lies. I'm loving it. From the article, this is the New York Times. This particular excerpt is not me. This is the New York Times. Quote, about 352,000 Russian soldiers had died in the war against Ukraine through the end of 2025, according to a new estimate, underscoring the high cost that President Vladimir Putin is willing to bear to pursue his battlefield aims. The number raises the prospect that about 500,000 soldiers in total, that's both sides, have died on the Russian and Ukrainian sides in the more than 4 years since Putin unleashed his full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The war has become Europe's deadliest conflict since World War II. End quote. And for any of you guys who believe those death numbers, I've got a gas chamber in Bolshevitz to sell you. Wooden doors, never used. But let's put that in perspective. This bar chart here, side by side, shows the number of Russian dead, if you're to believe this nonsense, compared to the total number of American troops who died in World War II. It's approaching World War II numbers. And now that's absurd. Okay, to think that's even possible. And I'm going to explain why. I mean, look at World War II here. There, Pearl Harbor. Invasion of Normandy. Iwo Jima. The Battle of Midway. All the fighting in the Pacific. In North Africa. It was a meat grinder. 425,000 dead Americans. And they're telling us now that this little thing going on in Ukraine, the Russians have lost almost as many. Absurd. Here's another image here. I talked about that movie. You see the first image? There's two images side by side. You see the girl, terrified looking girl. She's an actress. She's clutching a bag of Tostitos chips. And in the next image, you see the same girl holding a cat in what is said to be Albania. So they just turned the chips was a prop. And with the camera tricks that they had, the ability in that day, that's 1997. That's downright primitive compared to what is possible today. But they turned the chips into a little kitty cat. And then they broadcast that on TV. That's what the movie's about. And on the other image, that's modern day. That's Wag the Ukraine. You see a little girl, just like that. She's not holding an animal, but it's the same principle. And she's got some blood marks on her forehead. It's all fake. And you look at all the images coming out of Ukraine. You can tell they're crisis actors, just like Gaza, just like Iran, just like Lebanon. People holding a child and someone with a little ketchup on their face. It's so fake. And a lot of it's AI as well. So, okay. Let's continue with the article here. To put these absurd inference-based, quote, the article says this is based on inference, that they were looking at total deaths in Russia and inferring from the age of the deaths. It's all cooked up. These figures were pulled out of someone's ass. But to put these absurd inference-based numbers provided by the globalist, or make that quobalist, everything's under Q control now, Center for Strategic and International Studies, a DC think tank. The Russians have now lost about 80% of the total number of U.S. soldiers killed during the brutal years of World War II, which was contested on two vast fronts against two very powerful states, Japan and Germany, on three different continents, on land, on sea, and in air. Or another way of looking at it, it's about 6 times the number of American dead during the disastrous decade-long Vietnam War. I mean, this is just ludicrous on its face. I mean, you have a localized so-called war being fought just in the Donbass region. Russia is vastly superior to Ukraine, and we're supposedly approaching a number of war dead, and the United States lost fighting Germany and Japan combined for 3.5 years. Ridiculous on its face, but people don't think, which I guess is good because this is what the Q operation wants the world to believe. Does anyone have any actual footage of these epic battles in eastern Ukraine? Heck, there are more black and white videos of the First World War from 1914 to 1918 available than there are of this imaginary war. We've even got more dead bodies photographed from the U.S. Civil War battlefield at Gettysburg, 1863, than this. Not exaggerating either. We are also told that the kill ratio amounts to 2 Russians killed for every 1 Ukrainian. How would that even be possible? Let us, for argument's sake, pretend that this so-called war was and is real. Russia is a superpower defensively holding on to a small area of territory retaken 4 years ago. Ukraine, on the other hand, is hardly a powerful nation and is struggling to reclaim territory. So how can the much weaker party, operating in a much more dangerous role of offense, have killed twice as many enemy troops as it has lost? Why this particular scene remains in the movie, rated Q, at this time is not exactly clear. Perhaps it has to do with Putin aiding Trump in collapsing NATO and its remnant image. Or maybe a World War III scare will come from that region when the movie calls for it. We shall have to wait and see what happens in the Ukraine. As always, trust the plan, even if it does not suit our preferred timeline. I mean, seriously, think about it. In this day and age, every man, woman, and child has got one of these. We should have a proliferation of images and videos all over the internet of real bloodshed and fighting and action. Nothing. Instead, we get this. We get just these still shots, which are just ludicrous. And we literally have more verifiable images from the Civil War dead and World War I dead. Here, look at this. That's the Battle of Gettysburg. Those dead soldiers on the ground. There's many photographs like that. They had cameras back then. Camera technology was maybe 20, 30 years old. They took images. And those are real dead soldiers from the Battle of Gettysburg, Union and Confederate. And that naval battle you see there, that's the Battle of Jutland, 1916, World War I. There's actually silent film videos from World War I, old newsreels. And not to mention World War II. So we've got much more footage, hundreds, thousands of images and videos from these wars that happened a century and a half ago. And with this, in a day and age of ubiquitous universal iPhone ownership, this is what you get. There's a woman. It looks like she's smiling. She's all covered with blood. They put the bandage on her head and the fake blood on her face. That's an iconic image of the Ukraine war. Fake, just like Gaza and Iran. And there's another one, a guy carrying his tubby wife on his back away from the destruction. Look it up yourself. There's just hundreds of them. They all reek of fakeness. And you have to ask yourself this question. If any of these wars are real, why bother setting up and financing an operation to manufacture all these fake images? There should be, isn't there ample bloodshed and destruction to take film and video of, especially with the iPhones? No. I mean, you go ahead and believe all this stuff is real as you want, but it's all wag the dog fakery for strategic purposes. And why are they doing this? Because if they didn't do this, we went the other way, there would have been real bloodshed. That's why. Okay. So, that's all I got for today. If you enjoyed this video, as always, one time to time, buy me a cup of coffee. There's a link in the description box below. Also, if you don't have my books in PDF package yet, you get all 35 for just $29. A little extra, 38. I'll throw in the anti-New York Times articles in your inbox. Also, you will find in the description box a link to my Amazon page if you prefer the books in physical format. And some of the books, like my World War II stuff and the Protocols of Zion, you won't find that on Amazon. Surprise, surprise. But you can go to realnewsandhistory.com and find everything there. So as always, your support is greatly appreciated. And that's the only thing you're going to hear from me is in the description box. I do not respond to comments selling Nasara, Jasara, financial products, whatever. That's an imposter. As always, ignore him, vote him down. That is not me. So that's all I got for today. Thanks for stopping by and listening. We'll chat again very soon.